Hello, I'm IbyaXToyCat, and in Minecraft, one of the most fundamental mechanics of survival mode is the hunger bar. The hunger bar was added back in the beta 1.8 update in 2011 and represents Minecraft's very unique solution to health and healing. Instead of regenerating your health directly by eating food, like in previous Minecraft versions and a lot of other games, food instead fills your hunger bar, and when you have a high amount of hunger, your health regenerates, and when you have no hunger, your health starts to diminish. If you play on hard mode, it's actually possible to starve to death if you continue starving until your health reaches zero. This makes me ask myself, is it possible to beat Minecraft without eating any food at all? This seems like an easy thing to answer at first, but it actually proves to be a more difficult challenge in practice, as anyone who has watched one of my many failed live attempts can attest to. Although oh no, you ruined it again. Why did you ruin that? To use? Look at the, oh no, oh no! Not like this, not like. So today, I'm going to prove that it entirely is possible by walking you through and talking you through the entire solution to every part of this problem. Without further ado though, let's discuss why it would be possible to beat Minecraft without eating any food. Before I talk about the actual process of beating this challenge, I'll start by going more in depth about how hunger in Minecraft actually works. As it turns out, the hunger system actually has more going on behind the scenes than the player actually is able to see just with the hunger bar, because the hunger bar actually depends on another invisible bar, which is called the saturation bar. The saturation bar is used to calculate how much energy you're using while playing the game, and effectively works as your hunger bar's hunger bar, because when you use all of the saturation bar, you'll start to become hungry. The usage of the saturation bar depends on each of the following actions: walking, running, jumping, sprint jumping, mining, swimming, attacking, and of course taking damage. There also is the hunger status effect, which can be obtained in a few different ways, namely being attacked by a husk or eating one of these foods, but the purpose of this video will be ignoring by avoiding all of those things altogether. Here is a visual representation of each of their exhaustion values. Okay, it's pretty hard to see with the bad food mixed in with them, but when we remove them, it looks more like this. While they don't seem like high values, they really begin to add up when they are repeated a lot in a very short amount of time. To put these numbers in perspective, the base value saturation when creating a new world is set to just 5. Since we only have 5 saturation for the entire run, we have to manage every action we do very carefully. Our saturation will act as a strict budget we have to stick to, and every single action we take from this list has to be metaphorically purchased from the saturation budget. If we spend our budget to break only 100 blocks during the course of the challenge, we have already used a tenth of our saturation budget, for example. This budget gets even harder to manage when taking into account the higher values for things like attacking and sprinting. It would be very easy to accidentally overspend on this saturation, which means we wouldn't survive long enough to finish the challenge. Really, the challenge is all about, can we beat the game without using too much of our saturation budget? It will be nearly impossible to beat this challenge without a game plan, as it will be very easy to use up all of our hunger before we reach our end goal. Now that we've discussed food mechanics, let's establish the ground rules of our challenge, because for this challenge, it's going to begin as soon as we create a brand new Minecraft world. That Minecraft world has to have a randomly generated seed, so that we don't have advantages from various seeds. As well as that, we're also going to be setting the game to hard difficulty, so that it's possible to starve to death. Dying at any point in the challenge will be an automatic failure, so it's not possible to cheat by dying over and over again, because that's not really the point of the challenge, in my opinion. Also, I'm going to go ahead and say that drinking potions kind of counts as eating, because potions are really thick, right? They're kind of like like an energy shake or something. I'm gonna put them in the food category, and therefore we can't eat it for the entire run, because of course the other rule is we can't eat at all from start to finish, from spawning into the world until the point where we have defeated the Ender Dragon and entered the end portal, which is what makes the end credit play. There is no cheating, no creative, no changing difficulty, no checking seeds, none of that stuff. It has to be a legitimate survival experience. This should cover all of the restrictions of the challenge, as well as the success and fail checks, so let's now begin the challenge. So with everything else out of the way, let's get into the theoretical solution to this challenge, because right when we create this world, we can spawn into any type of biome anywhere in the world. Immediately, this can make or break the success of this run, because without any sort of luck, it is not likely we will survive. If we spawn in the middle of an ocean with no trees, we'll have to swim until we starve and die. If we spawn in the middle of a jungle, we have to spend a lot of, hunger just getting out of that jungle before we can find any of the loot we're going to need, because in this run, loot is king. Loot is not only a nice little benefit like it is in regular survival, loot is required for this because we need to find ourselves the saddle. Why is the saddle so important? Well, the saddle serves the purpose of allowing us to ride certain mobs, namely the pig, horse, and donkey. If we can find a saddle, it would be possible to tame a horse. Remember that chart of saturation values I showed you before? Nowhere on there is riding a horse because it does not count for using our saturation and hunger. That means if we can tame a horse as early as possible in the game, we can avoid using any hunger to move around the world, which is part of what makes this challenge even remotely possible. So with that knowledge in mind, we know the ideal spawn location would be a plains biome which had a nearby village with a saddle, because that means within a few seconds of spawning, with very little movement, we'd be able to find ourselves a saddle and then tame a horse which would spawn nearby. And as much as that horse would mean problem solved at first, right, we'd also have to take into account that we don't have to just keep ourselves alive anymore, but also keep the horse alive. So in addition to all the luck we need, we then have an additional problem we have to kind of carry around with us the entirety of the run. We have to accomplish every task in Minecraft while riding a horse effectively, which can be challenging to say the least. So now that we have our horse, we need to make progress towards the Nether. This requires making a Nether portal, and there are many ways to make a Nether portal, with the most common one being getting 3 diamonds, making a diamond pickaxe, and then mining obsidian. In previous runs, we've shown the much faster technique is to get 3 bits of iron, make a bucket, and then use water and lava together to make the obsidian yourself, and of course make it in the shape of a Nether portal. So now the important question is, how are we going to get 3 pieces of iron? In any normal run, this would be very easy, but again, every single block we mine, every single block we walk is on the clock basically, so we have to be very careful about how we choose to do this, because we could go underground, we could do a little bit of mining until we find some, make a furnace, do the usual kind of route, but that is going to cost us some blocks mined, which is why we ignore that route and instead jump on our horse and try and explore as many biomes as we can, looking for any source of free naturally generated loot. There's actually quite a few different structures that can spawn with iron. I'll show them all on screen right now. We just need to find one of those anywhere in the world, and although this is much slower than getting the iron the other way, it is definitely going to be much less hunger using, which is what we need today. We're willing to sacrifice time in exchange for less hunger, and that's what we need to do to get ourselves the 3 bits of iron. Also, while searching for these things, this is a great opportunity to help us find the big pit of lava we'll need for the portal, to help us find other handy items that might come in useful later, and also to help us find any snow-covered biomes. So this mostly includes the snow plains and the extreme hills, but any biome with snow on the ground is going to be very important, so we're going to pick up some snowballs, and we'll come back to why that's so important later. So let's say that we do find the iron, let's say we do find the lava, we do find the snowballs, and we can manage to make a Nether portal while on horseback. It's a lot harder than you might assume. We now have to work out a way to live with ourselves, knowing that we're going to bring our newfound stallion into the burning fiery depths of hell that's filled with ghast, skeletons, zombie pigmen, and blazes. This is not only challenging on the emotional level, because we have that deep emotional bond with our horse, we don't want to send him to hell, but also because you have to physically get off your horse, push him in, and then hope that he hasn't been pushed into a pit of lava. There is a small chance that something goes horribly wrong at this point that is basically outside your control. You could spawn on a small little island that you can't get off of in time because it's being attacked by ghast, instant death. You could spawn in a cave that's filled with lava, instant death. There are some bad things that can happen, but assuming it doesn't, then you're in the Nether. So our first objective in the Nether is to try and locate a Nether fortress, which sometimes can prove to be difficult. If we're lucky, we can spawn right next to one. However, if not, we're going to have to run the risk of traveling quite far for a Nether fortress, while simultaneously trying to avoid all of the risks of traversing the Nether, the pools of lava, the fire that is all around the place, the magma blocks. We have to avoid all sorts of fire at all costs, because catching on fire even once might be enough to make us lose our saturation and hunger. Even once we get to the Nether fortress safely, we then need to take on the Nether fortress and kill some blazes, because one of the drops blazes have is actually a blaze rod. We need at least 6 of these blaze rods, which means we need to kill a lot of these blazes without taking a single hit, because the blazes are firing constantly at us, and obviously that is fire, which has the exact same issue, so we need to find a way to avoid the horse and ourselves being hit. Since we need to kill blazes, it would waste our hunger if we attack them with a sword or fist, so to efficiently preserve our hunger, we can use snowballs to attack the blazes. This adds a bit of complexity and means that I have to keep a long range on everything from me, so they can't even see me, let alone attack me. But again, the upside to that is the fact that the blazes cannot attack us and we can get our blaze rods that we need. So 6 is the number that you usually go for. We might go for 1 or 2 more if you want to be safe, but today we're just going to take 6 because if you don't know the significance of 6 blaze rods equals 12 blaze powder, which is the perfect amount to fill an end portal. And although you sometimes have some that come free there, sometimes you'll waste some IF enders on the way to your end portal. So yeah, basically we need to get the perfect number, that is 6. And once we've gotten our 6 blaze rods, we need to then do the reverse of everything we've done so far, safely navigate the Nether Fortress, safely navigate the entirety of the Nether, not taking any fire damage, and get back to the portal. If we are lucky at this point, we will never have to go back to the Nether. That fast we can be in and out, and that's one of the safest ways to do things. However, next up we have an even bigger challenge because we need to obtain the 12 ender pearls from Enderman. So killing Enderman is usually a very time-consuming task as they only spawn at night or sufficiently dark caves or the Nether, all places that are kind of tricky and already filled with threats for us where we can't take damage. And yeah, attacking the Enderman is an even harder task because there aren't many options for us to kill the Enderman without using saturation. One of the easiest solutions would be to light the Enderman on fire. However, this causes them to teleport and you'd have to chase them around and wait until the fire slowly burns the Enderman, which would take a very long time because the Enderman has a lot of health. Not only does the Enderman have a lot of health, but the Enderman has a lot of attack damage too. In fact, on hard difficulty, if the Enderman can get a single attack on us, that is 5 hearts of our health immediately gone in one hit, which basically loses all of our saturation because of the health regeneration involved. So we need to work out a way to kill at least 12 Endermen, realistically more like 24 because it's roughly a 50% drop. We need to kill a lot of Endermen and we need to do so using very inefficient means while also avoiding every single other mob. This is the part of the run where it's really about loss avoidance rather than trying to find the optimal strategy. Either you do the fire method and then you accidentally run into mobs, or you go into caves or make your own caves, but you make it 2 blocks high. Endermen can obviously not get in there because they're 3 blocks high, and you can use that to attack them, but that will use saturation that way, plus walking around, plus mining the blocks. There is a big downside to pretty much every strategy to killing Endermen, and you need to kill a lot of them as well. But assuming you get lucky, assuming you don't get hit a single time by either the Enderman or any of the surrounding mobs, which will of course generate, because both nighttime and caves are of course famous for having lots of mobs spawn, not just the Enderman. Assuming you go through all of that time, all of that effort, and you're lucky enough, then you'll have the ender pearls you need, and then we can move on to the next challenge, because now we have to start preparing for the Ender Dragon. Using the collected ender pearls, we can make IF enders, which serve 2 purposes in Minecraft. One is that we can throw it into the air and it will guide us to the direction of the closest stronghold. And the second purpose is to fill up the end portal. Once the end portal is entirely filled up, you can go to the end. So obviously we need to make use of both of these uses of the IF enders. And because we have 12, which took a significant amount of time, we need to make sure we use them perfectly. So we'll be throwing a single IF ender and then following it until we find any sign of a stronghold. So in Java Edition, this is of course a lot harder because strongholds generally don't have many patterns, but on Bedrock Edition, there is the chance of finding one in the ocean and a much higher chance of finding it underneath a village. If an IF ender points you in the direction of a village, there is a good chance that just below said village, there is going to be a stronghold. It is worth remembering also that every single time we throw one of these IF enders in the air, there is a 20% chance it shatters, so we really do have to minimize the number of these we use, which is why we hope that just a single one will point us in the direction of some sign of a stronghold, but if it doesn't, then that's going to involve getting some more blaze rods and some more ender pearls, repeating the earlier steps again. Anyway though, so assuming we locate our stronghold without any difficulties, we need to find a way to get inside. Unless we are extremely lucky and have a stronghold accessible from the surface, either via water or via just like poking into a cave, we need to dig ourselves underground. And we can do that by mining, but that is bad because we once again risk our saturation. We could theoretically use TNT, but this requires us to have found a lot of gunpowder, which would have required a lot of desert temples earlier. It's possible, but assuming we don't have TNT and we don't want to mine our way in there, we could also use creepers, which are a natural spawning source of TNT basically. These are risky because although you can detonate a creeper without taking damage from him directly, it is very tricky to do and can cause some issues. So basically, no matter how we try to get into this stronghold, if it's not on the surface, it's going to cost us some saturation, and it's all about saturation minimization. That's right, we might need to break the one key rule of Minecraft. We might have to dig down to minimize the number of blocks broken. This would of course be accompanied with water to avoid any lava, but this is one of the very few situations where every single additional block broken adds a serious chance of us not finishing this run, and that is why we take the risk and we dig down. So after the long convoluted process of getting into the stronghold, we are finally inside, and now the name of the game is finding the end portal. But to find the end portal, which isn't necessarily a hard task, just a time consuming and kind of maze-based task, we have to avoid any mobs that can spawn in there, any lava that will spawn in there, and any silverfish that we might find along the way. We have to be careful of suffocation, we have to be careful of any unnecessary damage, because at this point in the run, we're likely to be pretty beat up in terms of how much saturation we have left going inside of us. We're going to start feeling pretty hungry, and that's why we need to find the end portal as soon as possible and in as uneventful a way as possible. Once we get to the portal, we need to place the IF Enders in like normal and activate the end portal. So to enter the end portal, we're going to want to dismount our horse, or we could run the risk of accidentally killing it. We need to make sure the horse is in the end first before we jump into it, because we cannot change dimensions while riding a mob. Another weird quirk of the end on all editions is the fact that you need to be cautious of where you might spawn in the end. In the same way as our Nether portal spawn is entirely random, this is a random seed. We might spawn out from the main island and need blocks to get in, or we might spawn in a little end cage or end box, and we might need to work our way out of that. And this is why one of the key preparations is to make sure we have some number of blocks on us and some pickaxe, because we might need to mine our way out of this. We might need to place some blocks. That hurts the efficiency of the run, but it might be a requirement because of random end location spawning. Anyway, let's assume that we hop into the portal just fine. We're in the end. Now we have the final phase of the plan to kill the Ender Dragon. This is what the entire run is culminating in. Can we kill the Ender Dragon without eating a single time during the fight? Because we've gone this far without eating, but can we get all the way to the end of the game? And that boils down to winning this fight. So this fight will be extremely difficult for us because we have to worry about Enderman and the Ender Dragon attacking us both at the same time. We could make our lives easier by wearing a pumpkin, of course, but if only if we were lucky enough to find one for our endeavors, and only if we're willing to deal with the extremely restricted view that that comes with. So assuming that we don't, we now have to beg the question, how are we going to take down the end crystal towers that constantly feed the dragon health? The answer to this question is kind of a callback to earlier on in our run, because any projectile will take down the end crystal, including the trusty snowball. So if we have some spare snowballs, and we will at this point in the game, we're going to use these snowballs to take down each of the towers that are exposed and reachable from the ground level, which should take out at least half of the towers. Then all we have left is the cage towers and the extra tall towers. So to climb the taller towers, we have a few options. For instance, we could place ladders and climb them at the same time, because climbing ladders does not use saturation. We could use the water bucket technique and slowly climb up a sea of water. Both these techniques, of course, run the risk of the dragon, which is a key concern the entire fight. But yeah, we have to work out one of these techniques to take down the taller towers, and of course also to take down the cage towers. And that requires getting physically close to them, you know, where we're climbing or where we're destroying the cages. And this means we have to watch out for the explosion radius. The radius on hard difficulty is much increased. The damage of one of these explosions is much increased. And to go all of this way and then be killed by an explosion while taking down a crystal, that's not what we're all about. So we're going to be avoiding those by getting ourselves a big distance on the end towers. And we can do this by making a small bridge off the end tower platform. Again, this requires looking around for the dragon at all times, because if he comes charging, we need to be ready to jump down and jump right back onto our horse at a moment's notice. Because one of the secondary benefits of having a horse in the end, as well as allowing you to move around free of charge in terms of saturation, if you need to jump off when you see a dragon flying at you, you can jump straight onto your horse and you won't take falling damage if you land on the horse rather than the ground, or rather if you mount the horse midway through your fall rather than falling down straight to the ground. So yeah, this might take multiple attempts depending on the dragon's behavior. It might take a single jump up to the top and run around kill all the towers, or it might take 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 or any number of them. But assuming we don't take damage during all of these, we should be able to move on to the next phase, because once the end towers are taken out, all is left is to kill the dragon. At this point, the fight gets a lot less difficult. There's a lot less variables of things that can go wrong, but that doesn't mean we can take things easy, because we do need to attack the dragon a lot. And we need a very powerful sword to do so, because every single swing we hit on the dragon eats more and more away from our hunger. The theoretical alternatives to this are using a bow and arrow to shoot at the dragon, but that would be slow and requires obtaining arrows, which does have its own drain on hunger. Or we could use beds, or we could use snowballs. There are a few different techniques, but the safest one, and the one which is most balanced, assuming we have any hunger left at this point in the run, is to use our sword and to attack the dragon from behind. Every time she flies away, we wait up and we avoid her attacks, wait until she comes back to the center, and then we're going to attack her from behind, and we're going to do this over and over again. It's very crucial that during the last of this fight, every decision we make is perfectly planned, because everything that we built up to could go wrong in the last few minutes of the run. We could be killed by the dragon in a mere instant. We could lose our hunger. We could starve to death. All these these things are possible, and that's why we're very cautious, but also very consistent in our swings at the dragon. So the Ender Dragon has 200 health, and even a Diamond Sword only does 7 damage, which means that with our base saturation value being only 5, that means we only have 50 swings before our saturation is all the way used up. This means that if we did literally nothing else, and we did have small walks here and there, we'd only have 21 swings for the entirety of the rest of the game, and given that it takes significantly more than 21 swings to kill all of the Endermen alone, you know, before we even consider all the breaking blocks and stuff, basically this is the fight between my Hunger Bar and the Ender Dragon. Can I swing my sword and land the hits 29 times at a minimum to kill the dragon, or will my Hunger Bar go down first? Will I starve, or will I kill the dragon? This is a truly epic battle between my Hunger Bar and between the dragon, but if we are focused, if we stay stuck to the plan, and if everything goes according to that plan, then we should be able to kill the dragon, which requires one final glorious blow, which has to be done while the dragon's in the center. But once you've done this, the dragon will rise up and disintegrate right in front of us. All we need to do then is enter the portal, which is spawned underneath the dragon, and then we can see the end credits. After everything being stacked against us, we can finally finish the game. Minecraft beating without eating food. This is probably one of the hardest challenges in Minecraft just because of how limited the options are when it comes to the small amount of in-game saturation and the things you can choose to use it on. The game was very much not intended to be played this way, but we did manage to prove it is possible, and it is something that you can try and attempt and theoretically do. But again, most people who have tried have failed. Even every single attempt I've given has failed, and this is something I totally recommend if you want a brand new challenging run of Minecraft that you probably won't do, but allows you to have that brand new ultra, extra hard expert difficulty but in Minecraft kind of thing that you might want. So yeah, I hope you did all enjoy this video. I hope you like this new kind of format, like semi-scripted, talking about, the theoretical possibleness of something so challenging, because this is the gauntlet, this is the challenge that you can choose to accept, and I thought this video format was a fun way to go through that. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Like it if you did like it, share if you really liked it, subscribe if you're around here, and let me know what you think of the scripted style, and if you want to see some more stuff like this, because it's something I've been considering playing around with recently, and yeah, I'd like to hear your opinions. But for now, thank you very much for watching, because I'll see you all next time. Goodbye.